Welcome to the Catalyst Sale Podcast. Many of us struggle with sales, whether it's from confidence, comfort, and just not wanting to be salesy. We want to help our customers. We know we can, but we complicate the process. This podcast is designed to help professionals like you improve at sales through process, practice, frameworks, and thinking differently about what you already know. I'm your host, Jody Mayberry, and with us, as always, is Mike Simmons, the founder of Catalyst Sale. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Jody.
I say with us, as always, because you're always here, and I'm not always here anymore. So it's always a treat to be on the show with you.
It is always a treat. We are recording this, I know we don't like timestamping this, and I'm going to timestamp it anyway, but we're recording in my favorite week of the year. It is Thanksgiving week.
And what is it that makes this your favorite week of the year?
This is the time period where I'm able to usually create some level of space in what I'm doing and what I'm thinking about, where I can start to say, okay, here's what's happened over the course of the past year, so I can take some time and reflect and be thankful for all of the things that have happened. And then it's also an opportunity to start to really accelerate some of planning and execution stuff as we move into the next year. It's just that period of time where it just tends to be a little bit quieter. It's not that same period between Christmas and New Year's where everybody's going through and doing all the family holiday stuff. This is my favorite week of the year.
This was the week of the year when I was a park ranger. I would always take a little extra time off because most people wanted Christmas as their extra time off. I always took it at Thanksgiving because there was no competition. Plus, Thanksgiving and the Friday after were always paid holidays anyway. So this was always a good week for that. But now my boss won't give me any time off.
Wolfgang keeping you in check, or Rebecca?
Yes. Well, Wolfgang, if you don't recall, is my 1-year-old yellow Labrador, and he does always keep me busy. Speaking of busy, Mike, I have a listener question for you, and I know that always makes you happy. Before I get into it, though, if you have a question you would like Mike to answer, a topic you would like us to talk about, please send it in. And Mike, how can somebody get a question or a topic to us?
Yeah, the best place to do this is just go to catalystsale.com, and there's contact information in catalystsale.com, and you can enter it in there. There's a live chat where you can enter it. And if you don't feel like going to the website, just go to podcast@catalystsale.com. Send an email, podcast@catalystsale.com, and that will get directly to us. The thing that really helps us is if you provide a little bit of context, like why do you think this person or this group of people would be a great group of folks to have on the podcast? It just helps us filter through things a little bit better. And thank you for doing that.
Well, this question comes from Jenny in Phoenix, so not too far from where Mike is. Okay.
I just realized this is awesome. We'll keep this in because it just demonstrated that I didn't listen to the question. And then you asked the question, or you started repeating the question. I think original question you asked me, and I went into autoplay mode on how to get, if people want to be guests on the podcast, if you want to ask questions, do the same thing. So whether you want to be a guest or you'd like to ask a question, do the same thing. Podcast@catalystsale.com. And Jody, I can't believe I just completely missed on answering a question that you asked me that was pretty direct.
Well, it shows that you just don't listen to what I say.
That is exactly right. What's the biggest mistake in communication?
Assuming it happened, which, all right, we'll leave that one there it is, and we'll move on to Jenny in Phoenix. Jenny tells us that she is working on a comp plan for next year. So she has 2 questions for you, Mike, related to that. I'm going to tell you both of them, and then we'll break it apart. Her first one is, what should I consider when developing a comp plan? And the second is, what are common mistakes people make when doing a comp plan? Mike, it's been a long time since we've talked about comp plans. So let's get into this. What should Jenny consider when working on a comp plan for next year?
I think the big thing an awesome question. The big thing to consider is what are we actually trying to accomplish? Like ultimately, what are we doing across the organization? And if we're putting together some stuff around a comp plan for a specific group of people, let's say it's customer success folks inside our organization, or maybe account managers inside our organization, or maybe it's even the broader sales team, what is it that we're actually trying to accomplish? And I know most people say that's pretty easy. Well, we're trying to make money. We've got a financial number that we're moving toward. Well, that's part of it. We also want to know is what modeling are we comfortable with using when thinking about our overarching cost of sale, how much it's going to cost us to generate that money. And knowing that we'll have a group of people who will exceed the comp plan significantly and those who will come up short, how much risk are we willing to take on in instances where someone exceeds the plan by a significant number, so that ultimately we create enough balance in the incentive to have people go out there and want to actively exceed the plan, but not get ourselves into a situation where someone at the end of the year starts to do the math and say, if I wait a couple extra weeks, I could actually set myself up for a really good year next year rather than ending the year on a lukewarm note. I know that's a lot of different stuff to bounce around in, but it ultimately comes down to answering this question. What are we actually trying to accomplish? What are our goals? What behavior are we trying to drive? And what are internal expectations around cost?
Okay, so let's take on the next part, and then maybe we can find a way to bundle it all together too. So what are the common mistakes people make when it comes to comp plans?
I think one of the biggest mistakes is just going back and implementing what you did last year and just saying, all right, we're going to do what we did last year and we're going to add 20% to it, or we're going to add 10% to it, or we're going to add 100% to it if we're in one of those organizations where we're looking at double-digit growth, and saying, I'm just going to take the same comp plan and I'm going to apply the same concepts to this next year. Another common mistake is they try to make the comp plan the same for everybody across the team. They try to make it so that I'm paying the same percentages to people at 50% of plan who are generating new customers as might be paying those who are at 50% of plan who are generating business within renewal customers. And I might even combine those who are generating money in a territory where the new customer acquisition might be enterprise. What we've got to remember when it comes to comp plans is not everybody should be paid the same percentage. The only time that everybody should be paid the same percentage is if each of those people have the exact same financial targets inside the business. So if every rep has a 500K target inside the business, and my expectation for on-target earning for each of those reps is 125K, and my base for each of those reps is 60K. So I've got 65K in variable that I should be working toward relative to hitting that 500K number. I know this is a lot of math, and actually I'll do a blog post that shares some of these numbers. But if I'm going through this process and saying everybody's the same, then my percentages can remain consistent. But most of us know that some reps have different quotas. Some reps have quotas that have more existing customer business inside that quota. Some reps have larger quotas just based on the territory that they're operating in. But their on-target earning might end up being the same. If their on-target earning is relatively the same, then you've got to work with math to figure out the actual percentages that you should comp a person at based on the money that comes into the organization. So that was a lot of math. Jody, do we need to go a little bit deeper into that mistake?
Well, no, we certainly can, but I don't want to go too far into math. I like that knowing, okay, this is one area you need to look at. Are there any other mistakes that come to mind?
Yeah, I think the other one is that you go through this idea of, hey, I'm going to go ahead and set my comp structure for X, and ultimately it creates a behavior that I wasn't anticipating. So, let's say that I've got a comp plan where I've got an SDR, a sales development rep that's in here, and I'm going to comp that person based on the number of valid opportunities that they create. So it's not a financial number, but I've got a comp plan that I'm going to use to compensate them based on the number of validated opportunities they create. And let's say that I comp them differently for inbound versus outbound. Let's say for every outbound deal that they create, validated opportunity they create, they get maybe twice as much as they do for any inbound one, because the level of effort might be lower on inbound than it is on outbound. What you may end up having happen is they focus significantly more attention on the outbound opportunities because of the opportunity to earn that they have. So let's be really careful about once we've established the behaviors that we're working toward, that we test the modeling to see where the models may break down. I think, and I know this gets back to the math piece, but comp is made up of 3 components when we talk about sales rep compensation. Sales rep compensation, sales leadership compensation, usually the same kind of 3 areas. Anything in the sales team, there's usually an on-target earning number, which is the amount the person will make if they hit plan, if they hit 100% of plan. There's a base number, which is the base compensation, the amount that they make on each of their paychecks. It might be, they might get paid twice per month. They might get paid once per month. They may get paid once every 2 weeks. But there's a base pay. That's their base compensation. And then the thing that makes up the balance between base and on-target earnings is your variable compensation. That's where commissions will play in, or other kind of incentive packages that you would use, behaviors that you'd expect to have happen in order to achieve those incentive goals, or the variable aspect of the compensation. But it's 3 things that we need to know. We need to know what our on target is. We need to know what our base is. And then we need to do the math to figure out how we spread the variable around each of the things we want the person focused on.
Okay. You've gone through comp plans in a couple of different ways. One, on the receiving end. 2, in Catalyst Sale, I know you've developed comp plans for people, and perhaps you did it in other organizations and I just don't know about it.
Yep.
Are there any things that you learned along the way that works? Because I see these that everyone's an individual, but do you do blanket comp plans, or do you ever adjust them for individuals or territories or products?
Absolutely. You adjust for whatever variables you can isolate for. And again, I know that sounds very math oriented and scientific, but if you can isolate for specific variables, then you can create compensation plans that are tailored to drive the things that you're interested in driving. Now, the challenge is every time you add a new layer to the comp plan, or you add a new version of a comp plan that exists inside your organization, you get away from simplifying things. You add complexity. If we want to simplify things, we usually are taking things away. When we add things to it, we create complexity. So there's a trade-off as you go through this when you say, do I want there to be a unique comp plan for each individual in the organization? Do I want to have a unique comp plan for teams inside the organization? Do I want to have a unique comp plan based on products or lines of business that people operate in? And those are judgment calls that each organization will make. You can make it really simple, have the same plan for everybody, but then you've got to be careful about which aspects of the organization might be put in a poor position because of that. So let's say, as an example, I've got a $1 million number. I sell into technology, and my territory is in the Bay Area, or my territory is in Seattle. The opportunity in the Bay Area or Seattle is completely different than if I'm selling a solution that focuses on technology companies that are based in Peoria, Illinois, or based in Huntsville, Alabama. And that's not a knock on Huntsville or Peoria. It's just, when you think of technology companies, most people would think of the Bay Area, would think of Seattle. Austin is up and coming. But we've got to be careful about whether or not the comp plan is reasonable or realistic for the given area. And one of the variables we can use to help make a comp plan be more realistic or reasonable for a given area is adjusting quota. So the quota in the Bay Area might be $1 million. The quota in Peoria might be, for the same kind of plan, might be 250 or 400K. Yet the OTE for both of those roles may end up being the same. So we've got a number of variables we can play with. Is that helpful?
Yeah. And I think that's something that needs to be considered, because even within a state, in Washington state where I live, $100 is different in Seattle than it is in Wenatchee, say, or over in Spokane, because it's different cost of living. So even geographically, I'm sure there's things you need to consider.
And really what I would do is I would work to simplify this as much as you can. And there's a lot of cool things you can do with spreadsheets where you change around variables and work on different formulas and come up with the most creative comp plan in the world. And it might look really good on paper because you understand it. But if you have a hard time communicating it to your sales team, if you have a hard time communicating it inside the organization, then the likelihood that you're going to be successful starts to decrease. You've added a barrier that isn't necessary. So I would suggest making it as simple as possible and starting with, like we talked about before, on target earning, an understanding of base, understanding of what the balance is, that variable piece is, and then what contributes to that variable. And it could be, one of the things that contributes to the variable is quota. Another thing that contributes to variable are the percentages that you pay at each stage. I'm a big fan of breaking that out into 3 distinct groups. So first 50%, next 25%, and last 25% to get us to 100% of the total number. But most of you who've listened to the podcast long enough know that I like to break things out into three parts. And there's another example, 50. So first 50, next 25, and next 25 to get us to the 100 on the variable side.
All right. I don't know if you heard it, Mike, but my dog, we've already talked about Wolfgang, and now he's at my office door asking to come in. So that's part of his comp plan, is to get to lay on the couch while I record, I guess.
There you go.
So we talked about Jenny's questions. What should she consider? What are common mistakes? I threw in a couple of my own questions there, but is there anything else that we should know or talk about that hasn't been brought up? Because I have to admit, there's a lot I don't know about this. So I don't know always what to ask when it comes to comp plans.
Well, I think we hit on the basic stuff, which is the kind of working through some of the math. The other piece is just being very direct and deliberate with all of the stakeholders in the organization, and think about who those stakeholders are. So this is another reason why it's very important to have a very good relationship with those on your finance team inside the organization. This could be your CFO, this could be your controller, this could be whoever is responsible for managing the relationship with the sales team. But have a conversation with the person who's responsible for the money in the business to help understand what the implications are and what the potential risk is relative to the way the comp plan is being designed. Don't fail alone when it comes to this stuff, and getting another set of eyes looking at it will help you start to simplify these comp plans so that if finance understands it and sales understands it, and then the sales reps understand it, then we've got a high level of clarity inside the organization. Ideally, we've got a clear level of alignment inside the organization, and folks understand what they're working on, why they're working on it, and how they're working on things. Another common question that comes up periodically is, well, what if I'm a rep and I'm not working on the deal, but I get asked to come in and deliver a demo because I'm going to come in and support somebody. I might support somebody as part of a maternity leave or a holiday period or just any number of things. You know what? This is what you get paid a salary for, in my opinion. You get paid a salary to participate as a teammate inside the organization. So if you get asked to participate in those things, don't send the follow-up and say, what's my rip, or how much am I going to make on this, or what percentage am I going to get paid, or how much of this is going to be allocated to me. And I know it doesn't happen everywhere, but sometimes this happens where people will start to connect themselves to deals just as a way to try to drive additional compensation. If you're in there just as a support resource to help out, know that you're probably going to bring somebody else in as a support resource to help out at some point in time. And some of the stuff is just covered in the base compensation that you get.
All right. Let's remind you again, if you have a question for Mike Simmons, he wants it. If you have a topic, send it over. And Mike, listen to the question this time. If someone has a question or a topic, how can they send that in?
You can go to podcast@catalystsale.com as far as an email and just send it directly to us. That's where we'll take listener questions. And one of the things I'd love is some feedback on this episode. Did we hit the mark? Are there additional details? Designing comp plans is something near and dear to my heart, and I am happy to answer any questions that we didn't cover or your pushback around, hey, dude, you're just complicating this stuff. So love the feedback.
All right. It's always great to get feedback. Thank you for the question, Jenny. Thank you for a great episode, Mike. And thank you for joining us for another episode of the Catalyst Sale Podcast.